Coming out 443. It's 500, 400 boys, 56. Scott, good to see you. How you doing? The first one in today. Evening, Miles and CMF. Hope you're looking forward to the weekend. I am. Very looking forward to the weekend. I'll be honest. I have to get one appointment out of the way tomorrow, and a little bit of work, but resting as well, which is good. How's your weekend going to be, Joe? Hoping it's good as well. Okay. Thanks. Same to you. Let's go, Scott. Okay, let's do intro disclaimer of what we're going to talk about in tonight's live, and then everybody should be in for the first part of the live show. Oh no. Something's cut out. Oh no. T, good to see you as well. How you doing? The comment section isn't working for some reason. Yeah, I'm the first one today. Yeah, just T's message didn't come up. But T, good to see you as well. How you doing? I think the rest of the messages should work again. Don't know what happened. Okay. Welcome to the CMF Live. If you're watching this for the first time ever, the CMF stands for Crypto Mouse Family. My name is Miles. You can tune to this live Monday to Friday, 10 p.m. long time onwards for the most recent news regarding cryptocurrencies, CBDCs, AI politics, and regulations. Pretty much all the information you should know about regarding the world, completely transforming it into a digital space. The disclaimer of this live show, as always, is not financial advice, not political advice, and whatever I say is only for entertainment purposes. Also, this is episode 457 of the CMF live show. Everyone's watching right now. So let me just give you a breakdown of what we're going to be talking about in tonight's live show by the time everyone tunes in. We're going to be talking about essentially Bitcoin in tonight's live show regarding the war that's still going on, because it's a continuous war that's having continuous effects on the market space, on every aspect of it. It could be essentially the 6 oil ships that were essentially, destroyed in a way, or was essentially what's happening straight of Hormuz, or the missile strikes that are happening. Everything is adding some sort of attention towards the market space, good or bad. We're also going to talk about essentially Iran on tonight's live show as well, regarding their crypto movements. A new research report has came out on, essentially what the Iranian government has been doing with cryptocurrencies during this war. We're also going to talk about essentially Circle on tonight's live show, and BlackRock also. We're going to go through news regarding stablecoins on tonight's live show, essentially, and Bitcoin, and as a perspective coming in from essentially Stanley Duncan. We're also going to be talking about tonight's live show regarding the MoonPay, essentially payment platform. They've introduced something interesting, you could pretty much say. I'm going to share that with you on tonight's live. We're also going to talk about tonight's live regarding the Middle East crypto trading surges that are happening as well. We're also going to go through news on tonight's live regarding the crypto lobbying spending that's going on. As I've talked about it before, there is a political crypto campaign that essentially is funded by Coinbase, Ripple, Kraken, and a few other big, essentially major crypto players inside the space, who are funding essentially campaigns for any politician, Republican or Democrat, who's in favor of the cryptocurrency regulations. We're also going to talk about tonight's live regarding the Fed, and regarding the Fed Skinny Master account and Master account, essentially handing over to the crypto space. We're also going to talk about tonight's live regarding JP Morgan, but not JP Morgan itself, former JP Morgan employees. And why are we talking about them? Because they've did something interesting. We're also going to talk about tonight's live regarding Ripple, as we always do. Now, those are the news talks on tonight's live: war news, straight up Hormuz news, crypto news, market news, tension news, JP Morgan news, and obviously Ripple news as well, BlackRock news, and Fed news as well. Now, before we go through the first news on tonight's live, which is regarding Bitcoin and the Strait of Hormuz situation, let's go to the comment section first. This was happening there, and then we go straight into the first news. So, let's see where we were at. We were here. Morning, Miles and CMF. Shelly, good to see you. How you doing, Shelly? How you been? Share the live. Let's go, Scott. Good evening, Miles and CMF. Free Feather. Good to see you as well. How you doing, brother? Good evening, Miles and all the CMF. JP. Good to see you as well. How you doing, brother? How you been? Good evening, Miles. How are you doing? I'm doing great. Good to see you as well, Kelly. How you been? Everyone like and share. Let's support Miles and CMFT. Thank you so much for saying that. As I said, our new policy inside the CMF, it's you scratch my back, I scratch yours. It's based on loyalty. If you like and retweet, then you can get a response from me. And I don't. For the longest time, and I'm not going to, as I said, I will never charge a single penny because I just find that wrong. But the only thing I ever ask in return is a like and a retweet. If you don't like and retweet, then don't expect me to reply to any of your messages or phone calls. Just all you have to do is just like and retweet, and you can ask any question whenever you're stuck inside a crypto space. Even while I was on CMF, Jason, good to see you as well. How you doing? Congratulations on program 457. Thank you so much, Scott. Good evening, Miles and CMF. Manny, good to see you. How you doing? I agree. Let's go, Scott. Let's go, Scott. Now, okay, let's talk about the first news on tonight's live, which is Bitcoin ever so slightly dropping, but recovering in a way. So, Bitcoin quickly drops 3.5% today, essentially, and did slightly bounce back. As fresh Iran escalation essentially short circuits the crypto rally, essentially, is what they're suggesting. Bitcoin experienced a sharp and sudden decline of 3.5% today as reports of fresh geopolitical, essentially, escalations involving Iran sent shockwaves through the global markets. This volatility effectively short circuited a burgeoning rally that had seen the asset testing recent highs, highlighting how sensitive the financial plumbing of the digital asset market remains to external, essentially, macro shocks. As investors essentially move to flip the switch into a defensive, essentially, posture, the utility era of 2026 faced a reminder, essentially, that even decentralized networks are not immune to the immediate flight to safety maneuvers that essentially are categorized in terms of the traditional, essentially, market panics. These sudden retracements, it also underscores the complex relationship between digital assets and global security events. Geopolitical risk, essentially, premiums. The rapid drop illustrates that in the moments of essentially acute military tensions, the market also often sees an unconditional surrender of leverage positions as traders move into cash or traditional safe havens like gold to weather the essential potential instability. On-ramp volatility. With the US Clarity Act has brought more institutional participation, the suddenness of the move suggests that the banking blockade of high frequency, essentially, agromatic trading still plays a dominant role in the privacy discovery during times of crisis. Network resilience versus price. Despite the price action, the underlying infrastructure remained essentially stable, fulfilling its role as a high utility settlement layer as envisioned by the Genius Act. Even the traditional, essentially, financials did face its own sets of synchronized, essentially, sell-offs as well. During this war, it's not just the crypto market space feeling the pain. Although we are a 24/7 market space, so we get the shockwaves before the stock market gets it essentially, because we are a 24/7 market space. Now, what's been happening in the Middle East? Essentially, the 6 ship, essentially, oil tankers that were hit by the Iranian regime. It's showing the world that for how long are you going to let the Iranian regime bully you, pretty much? Trump is the only man that had the balls to stand up to the Iranian regime. Doesn't matter what people say, essentially, this is Israel's war, or essentially, this is that's war, this war, and so on. And people try to describe, what's happened in the Middle East before with wars, and it's never a good scenario. Trust me, anything is better than the Iranian regime. Anything. And what they're essentially showing to the world is that they will do anything to stay in power. They hit 6 civilian, nothing to do with the war, nothing. The Iranian regime hit 6 civilian cargo ships, where the civilians had to get on small boats and escape. We don't know if there has been any sort of injuries whatsoever or not, but it is showing the world that essentially they need to get involved and stop the Iranian regime, because the bullying of the Iranian regime needs to stop. And people might say, what are you talking about? What bullying from the Iranian regime? Are you, if anybody is asking that question, you really need to stop watching Al Jazeera and really start watching other news, mainly maybe even X news, because at least that's coming from the people who are in Iran, who are posting these videos or posting these news sources, essentially, of what's happening around them, filming it with their own phones, and whenever they can, connect to a Starlink satellite and try to share it on X, essentially, before anywhere else. So That's what essentially has happened in the Strait of Hormuz. That caused slight shockwaves inside the market space today, and also hitting the oil refineries, or even more hotels are getting hit right now as well. That's causing shockwaves inside the market space. Yet the crypto market space did go through slight shock, bounce back like there's no tomorrow. So why is the crypto market space not shattering into the ground like the Ukraine war or the China tariff situation, which caused the markets to dump coordinately? Reason why is because, as I said previously, the Iranian government launders money through cryptocurrencies. I said this before the war started. How do I know this? If you're new to this, I'm Iranian. I know how the Iranian government operates. Every Iranian who is honest with themselves knows how the Iranian government operates. They are slimy, cancerous, and this is what they're doing. Because it's not the first time they've did this. Iran moves hundreds of millions in crypto during nationwide network blackout, report reveals. During the blackout situation we had in Iran, where in 2 days they cut the internet essentially and decided to slaughter 40,000 people pretty much. They decided also during that time, while slaughtering innocent people in the streets that are protesting against the government, to also launder cryptocurrencies. And they've been doing it non-stop. That's why crypto is standing its ground. When have you ever seen cryptocurrencies stand their ground in any war scenario? We had a tariff situation with tech companies in China, and the crypto space felt like it was going to zero. But then suddenly we have a major catastrophic war. Iran, US, Israel, Russia's slightly involved with information. NATO's being hit. The UK bases are being hit. This is, all over the place. There are about so far 20 countries of some extent involved in this war, and the crypto space is just standing there. Yet we had a tariff news regarding China, and it just plummeted into the ground. It's a bit odd. The reason why it's odd is because there's money laundering happening right now in cryptocurrencies, and it's mainly to do with the Iranian government. So, and I said this before the war started, you got to put two and two together. A startling new report reveals that the Iranian government successfully moved hundreds of millions of dollars in digital assets during a total essentially nationwide internet blackout. This operation underscores the essentially clandestine capabilities of state actors to navigate the world's financial plumbing, even when traditional communication channels are essentially served. By utilizing specialized satellite links and private networks, authorities were able to flip the switch on massive capital movements, bypassing both domestic unrest and international essentially banking blockade that has long sought to isolate the regime from the global economy. Before the war started, people like me who are Iranian, we didn't need study reports or sources have revealed Iran's moving. We knew they were going to do this. If you're Iranian, you know step by step what the Iranian government is capable of and what their next steps are going to be. Par on par, you would know what their next steps are going to be. Resilience against essentially isolation. The ability to conduct large scale transactions during a total blackout demonstrates that decentralized settlement layers can provide essentially a high utility on ramp for essentially state level activity that remains invisible to standard monitoring systems. This also revealed to the world that cryptocurrencies during internet blackouts can also move quite freely. Sanction evasion tactics. Analysts suggest that these movements represents an unconditional surrender of the idea that physical internet infrastructure can fully contain the flow of digital value, as encrypted ledgers offer a sovereign alternative to legacy financial networks. Security implications. The report has raised alarms within the framework of the US Clarity Act and a Genius Act as policymakers weigh the dual essentially use nature of technology that can be empower both individual freedom and state level sanction invasions in the 2026 digital economy. This incident serves as a stark reminder, essentially, of complexities and inherent in the national financial infrastructure of the modern era. While the 2026 global economy benefits from the efficiency of on chain value transfers, the same technology allows essentially for the rapid movements of wealth outside the reach of international regulators. As the details of these transfers continue to emerge, the international community is likely to intensify its focus on tracking non-essentially traditional data pathways to ensure that the utility era of finance is not exploited to essentially undermine the global security and transparency standards. This just showed the world that even during an internet blackout, You can still move crypto around. You can still purchase crypto and move it around different wallets, which is exactly what the Iranian government did during an internet blackout, which has always been a topic for the crypto space of, what happens if the internet goes out? Can crypto survive? Well, the Iranian government just proved yes, crypto can survive. Honestly, they should seize all their wallets. I can't wait. The amount of champagne bottles me and every Iranian who has brain cells is going to be popping the day this regime collapses and the day all of their assets get seized. I hope the British come to their senses and essentially seize all their assets as well. Every other country should seize the diplomatic Iranian assets as well, their wallets, everything. Every single thing should be seized and given back to the Iranian people. Now, Circle is what we talk about on tonight's live. We'll come back to the Middle East a little bit later on tonight's live, but Circle is what we talk about next on tonight's live. Circle overtakes BlackRock in tokenized treasuries as market hits a record $11 billion. That is massive. Circle overtaking BlackRock, a fintech company overtaking BlackRock, and just any fintech company taking over BlackRock from the blockchain sector is insane. Circle has officially surpassed BlackRock as the leading issuer of tokenized US treasuries, a milestone that comes as the total market for essentially these on-chain assets, it reaches a record of $11 billion. This shift marks a significant moment in the evolution of the 2026 digital economy, where high utility stablecoin issuers are now competing directly with the traditional financial space as it manages to define the future of the national, essentially, of the nation's financial plumbing. By providing a seamless 24/7 on ramp for sovereign debt, Circle is demonstrating that the digital native firms can offer liquidity and settlement speeds that traditional frameworks struggle to match. The growth essential of tokenized treasuries highlights a broader flipping of the switches regarding how institutional capital is managed. Liquidity superiority. The rise essentially in Circle's market share suggests that the investors are prioritizing the high utility nature of the asset that can essentially be moved and settled instantly on chain, bypassing the friction of the legacy banking blockade. Compliance and integration. The record essentially $11 billion market cap has been supported by the clear guidelines established under the US Clarity Act, which has provided the legal clarity necessary for massive institutional inflows into tokenized essentially instruments. Yield bearing infrastructure. As tokenized treasuries become a staple of national financial infrastructure, they are fulfilling the visions of the Genius Act by merging the safety of the government backed debt with the efficiency of decentralized ledgers. This achievement by Circle is seen as a validation of the company's long term strategy to integrate deeply into the existing financial system rather than seeking its unconditional surrender. As the market for real world assets continues to expand, the competition between tech first innovators and legacy giants like BlackRock is expected to drive even greater efficiency in the global settlements layer. For the 2026 global economy, the normalization of tokenized debt ensures that the most fundamental, essentially building blocks of finance, are now fully equipped for a digital first world. Circle overtaking BlackRock when it comes to essentially US treasuries is massive. I mean, we know that Tether essentially is huge when it comes to US treasuries as well, but Tether's headquarters are in a country where it's very easy to manipulate your paperwork, easiest way to put it. Not saying Tether is doing that in any sort of a way, just saying, being in that particular country, it's very easy to pay someone off to get different paperwork. But Circle is essentially based in the US, and we know that they're not going to be faking their paperwork because it'll just lead to massive fines and lawsuits and a possible prison sentence. So, first company to ever overtake BlackRock when it comes to US Treasuries, a fintech company. Amazing. Now, on the topic of essentially US Treasuries, tokenizations, and stablecoins and Bitcoin could reshape finance, says Stanley, essentially Doc Miller. Before we talk about him, let's go to the comment section first. This was happening there, and then we're straight into the next news on tonight's live. By the way, thank you so much to everybody who has liked and retweeted this live show as well. If you haven't liked and retweeted, take 2 seconds to like and retweet the live show. As I said, the new policy inside the CMF, which is based on loyalty. Even if I was a CMF, Jason, good to see you. So how you doing? Scott, okay, no, we were here, I think. Yeah, we were here. Are the US going to put boots on the ground in Iran? It's been suggested that the US could possibly put boots on the ground in Iran. Um, they can do if they wanted to. It just depends on how they think it's better to go ahead with this. If boots on the ground need to be there, then boots on the ground need to be there. If essentially, it can be done with precision airstrikes, then it can be done with precision airstrikes. We don't know. The benefit of having Trump as a president, putting to one side how, he doesn't take BS and he has a vision and he's going for it no matter what anyone says, Congress, whoever it may be, he has a vision and he's going for it. Also, Trump being unpredictable helps a lot, especially in a war, because the other side doesn't know what Trump's next move is going to be. Nobody knows. And CNN, on the other hand, is absolutely being propaganda news for the Iranian government. I don't know if anyone has realized it or not, but CNN, I mean, Al Jazeera has always been propaganda news for the Middle East. I mean, the Iranian government funds Al Jazeera through Qatar. That's just a given. But CNN, being an American news channel, the amount of propaganda they publish is ridiculous. You would think that CNN is the Iranian regime's news channel at this point. Hello, Miles and CMF. Comatose, good to see you. How you doing? What up, Miles and CMF? Ray, good to see you. How you doing? And do you know what I don't understand mostly? Why do people insist of living in a country they hate? It just blows my mind. It's especially with the liberals. Wherever they are in the West, they want to live in these dictatorship countries. It just blows my mind. There's people in America, there's people in Canada, there's people essentially in Australia, there's people in the UK, there's people in the US and so on, and they hate the countries they live in, yet they won't leave. That's also confusing too. And CNN tends to interview these liberals a lot, the ones that are supporting dictators that have never lived under a dictator. And it just blows my mind that they don't leave the country. Because I would happily, I think anybody would happily want to live in the US if they, had the opportunity to live in the US, because we would be proud to live in the US. We'd be proud to live in the UK if it, wasn't under this particular parliament. This essentially, if we had the Queen, it was 10 times better. When we had the Queen in the UK, it was 10 times better. But anyways, put that to one side. But I would be happy to live in the West, which is where I'm living in the West. And it just blows my mind. The liberals that don't like the West, yet live in the West. Why not just go and live in Iran if they love it so much? Why don't they just go and live in North Korea if they love it so much? Why do they insist on living somewhere they hate? What up, Miles of CMF? Ray, good to see you. How you doing? How you been? But yes, CNN loves interviewing those morons. Even Miles, hope you're well. I think I have your cold. You think you have my cold? Hi, Miles and CMF. Hope everyone is doing well. Let's go, Ronnie. How you doing? Now, stablecoins, Bitcoin, and how it can essentially reshape the future of finance. So, a legendary investor, Stanley, very well known inside the stock market, has signaled a major shift in his outlook, stating that stablecoins and Bitcoin have the potential to fundamentally reshape the global financial plumbing. In a recent discussion, essentially regarding the traditional financial space, the titans, in other words, noted that while he was once a skeptic of the current trajectory of the 2026 digital economy, it suggests an unconditional surrender of the old ways of moving value is essentially underway. He emphasized that the high utility nature of digital assets makes them formidable challenger to legacy systems that have long essentially benefited from a banking blockade essentially of inefficiencies. Stanley perspective essentially highlights growing institutional realization that utility of finance is a permanent fixture. Stanley was someone that essentially hated the crypto space. Essentially, just like any other traditional, essentially banker or Wall Street person or analyst or so on, didn't see the point of the crypto space. So it completely has speculation, nothing to it, and that it wouldn't change the world whatsoever. Now Stanley is tuning, it's actually singing a different tune. Now he sees the crypto space as unstoppable, the crypto space that can change the world of finance as we know it, and that the crypto space that essentially won't stop whatsoever, and that we are aiming towards a utility era. It's a permanent fixture, he's suggesting now. The stablecoin on ramp, he noted essentially, he pointed to the rapid adoption essentially of tokenized dollars as a superior method for instance essentially settlements, noting that they provide a degree of transparency and speed that aligns with the goals of the US Clarity Act. Bitcoin as a trust layer. While the acknowledging essentially its volatility, he described Bitcoin as a crucial piece of the national financial infrastructure, serving as a decentralized hedge that can flip the switch on traditional trust models during times essential physical uncertainty, modernizing essentially the ledger. The veteran investor essentially suggested that the integration of these technologies, especially with the Genius Act and the other acts on the way and frameworks, it would ensure that the US remains a competitor in the essentially world of global settlements and cross-border payments and tokenizations and blockchain in general. This endorsement from one of the most respected names in macro investing is seen as a pivotal moment for the maturation of the market. In other words, people take his words very seriously when it comes to essentially the market space. Analysts suggest that when Stanley figured out essentially and validated the role of decentralized assets, it encourages other institutional players to bridge the gap between traditional portfolios and essentially native digital reality. As the 2026 global economy continues to evolve, his comments reinforce the idea that the future of finance lies in the hybrid systems where reliability essentially meets the traditional financial sector, and that how crypto can transform everything around us. Facts. And it's good to see essentially people like him, very essentially entrusted, very respected, essentially macro analysts and investors and so on, coming to the table, giving their perspectives and singing a different tune because they were all singing the tune of crypto is speculative, it's for criminals, and so on and so on. Now perspectives are changing. Now it's all about crypto can't be stopped. Crypto is going to change everything around us. That's why more institutions are entering the crypto space. Those regulations are on the way. That's why there's no stopping whatsoever. It's good to see this is happening, a change of perspective from high profile, essentially macro, essentially analysts and investors. Now, moving on from that, because it shows credibility as well towards the market space, which is what we love, credibility inside the market space. To MoonPay. Before we talk about MoonPay, I just want to say one thing. As I was mentioning on this live about 2 minutes ago, how, why would anyone want to live in a country they hate? And I said the liberals makes no sense when liberals are protesting essentially in the West, saying they love dictators, yet they want to live in the West and benefit from what the West offers, when these liberals can go and live in North Korea or under the Iranian regime they so much love. They can go and live in those countries, but for some reason they live in the West and they hate the West. Ironically, one idiot decided to put a stupid comment at the exact same time I was saying these words. I mean, it just makes no sense. Why do you want to live in a country you hate so much? And it's only in the West. I love living in the West. I genuinely love living in the West. And this country was incredible under the Queen of England. This country was incredible under the Queen of England. But I love living in the West. And it just blows my mind when I see liberals, dancing in favor of dictators like Kim Jong Un from North Korea or Rat Ali, essentially Rat Khomeini Ali in Iran. They're in favor of him, but yet they live in America. Then go and live under a dictator for once in your life because you haven't lived under a dictator. You don't know what it's like to live under a dictator, but yet they want to run their big mouths. So it just blows my mind. And then some idiot decided at that moment in time put that comment, which I'm not going to read out, but it seems like I triggered one of these morons. Now, MoonPay. MoonPay introduces essentially ledger secured AI crypto agents to address wallet key risks. MoonPay has unveiled a new suite of AI driven crypto essentially agents designed to simplify the complex financial plumbing of essentially digital asset managements while significantly reducing the risks essentially associated with private key storage. These agents utilize advanced essentially machines learning to execute essentially user commands via natural language and bridging the gap for those who find the traditional banking blockade of complex wallet interferences a barrier to entry. By integrating essentially these tools with Ledger's secure hardware environment, MoonPay is attempting to flip the switch on common security essentially versus convenience trades off, ensuring that the 2026 digital economy remains accessible without sacrificing the principles of self custody. The introduction of these AI agents highlights a new frontier in the utility era where technology acts as a proactive guardian for the users. Automated security guardrails. The AI agents are programmed to recognize the flag and suspicious transactions and patterns before they are signed on the ledger, providing an essential on ramp for newcomers who are often targeted by sophisticated phishing attempts. What MoonPay has launched is incredible, you could pretty much say. Because there's still a lot of people that don't want to be inside the crypto sector because they're afraid of getting scammed, especially inside the crypto sector, which you can get scammed in the traditional market space as well. But this is a new territory for a lot of people, the crypto sector. So what essentially MoonPay is introducing is these AI agents essentially that take care of everything for you in a way where you are safe in terms of doing transactions on your cryptocurrencies and so on. So amazing what essentially MoonPay is offering to newcomers or even people who are already inside the crypto space and want these essentially benefits as well. They will pretty much find out before you sign off any payments if that's essentially a phishing wallet. In other words, if that's a scam wallet. By tethering essentially the AI's execution capabilities to Ledger's secure element, the system ensures that while the agent can essentially propose a draft transaction, the unconditional surrender of the key essentially never occurs without a physical manual confirmation. Alignments with essentially modern standards, this hybrid essentially approach to security aligns with the transparency and consumer protection goals of the US Clarity essentially Act, offering a high utility solution that meets the safety expectations of a modern national financial infrastructure. Industry experts also suggest that this shift essentially towards intelligent custody is a vital step in the evolution essentially of the 2026 global economy. As the Genius Act encourages wider adoption of digital assets, the essentially tools that obstruct the technical complexities of the blockchain while hindering essentially the underlying security are becoming indefensible. By combining the processing essentially power of AI with the physical security of the essentially traditional market space of hardware manufacturers, MoonPay is setting a new standard for how participants interact with decentralized networks, ensuring that the future of finance is both smarter and safer for everyone. MoonPay is using AI technology to make sure that people who are inside the crypto space and essentially want to do payments essentially or want to hold their crypto assets in general, these AI agents could make your life easier and keep you secure inside the crypto space that is actually filled with scams. You just don't know what you're doing. New people get scammed quite a lot inside the crypto space. And, there's also influencers that scam people as well, which is incredibly wrong. Now, moving on from that to back to the Middle East, because Middle East crypto trading surges aimed regional financial shifts. Before we talk about that, let's go to the comment section first. This was happening there, and then we go straight into the next news. Let's see where we're at. Lena, good to see you as well. How you doing, Lena? How you been? Hello. Mike, good to see you as well. How you doing? How you been? Ronnie says it's because those people are clueless, playing smiles. Facts. In your opinion, Miles, realistically, are we going to still be having a super cycle this year? Just seems as taking forever way after delays. Well, we're going to look at it this way. It's a good question. Are we still going to have a super cycle this year? We're going to look at it from this perspective. We are in one of the biggest wars the world has seen so far since the World War One and World War Two scenario. It's nowhere near as essentially as that, but it could get there, and there's a lot of countries involved. And the cryptos, what I'm trying to mention is the crypto space is still standing its ground. And yes, there are elements of money laundering why it's holding its ground, but there's also elements of a Clarity Act that's going to be passed on the way. There's elements essentially of the Genius Act getting its yield, essentially. There's elements of essentially the Fed allowing essentially crypto companies to get some sort of Fed Skinny Master account and so on. So there's a lot of things on the table this year, a lot of extremely positive things, and a war. Yet the crypto space is holding its ground. And that's the biggest factor. When we had the Ukraine, essentially Russia war, Russia could have also money laundered, and they probably did during the Ukraine-Russia war through cryptocurrencies because they were sanctioned. But yet the crypto space didn't hold its ground. And then we had the China and Taiwan situation. It wasn't a war, but there was a lot of threats towards each other. And that's also interrupted the crypto market space and made it go down. And then essentially we had the other tariff scenarios around the world that made the crypto space essentially get on shaky grounds. And then we had the China and tariff tech company scenario with the US that also made crypto plummet into the ground. Yet we are in one of the biggest wars. The Strait of Hormuz is pretty much slightly closed. 6 oil ship tankers were hit today. Oil refineries are hit. In Dubai, hotels, villas, land, anything you pretty much think of is getting missiled right now. Cyprus got missiled right now as well. There's so much happening. There's about roughly 20 countries involved at this point. NATO is being hit right now, yet the crypto space is standing its ground. So, do I believe that we're going to be having some sort of a super cycle? I'll tell you what, if the crypto space is not dropping into the ground and is holding in the line, which it never does, that means something big is about to happen next. Because if we were going to go down, we would have went down with the first missile. We are in day 12 or 13 or 14 of the war right now, and it's still holding its ground. And yes, there are, as I said, aspects of money laundering happening with the Iranian government, but how much money laundering is there possibly going to be to hold this crypto space essentially and where it is? There's some aspects of money laundering, but the rest is the market doesn't want to sell. And that's different. We've never had that. We had smaller incidences inside the crypto space. As I said, China getting tariffed for essentially their computer chipsets and so on. And that made the crypto space plummet. But when there's 20 countries involved in a war, missiles flying everywhere, 6 tankers, oil has reached prices we've never seen before per barrel. Iran is suggesting they're going to push it to $200 plus per barrel. And yet the crypto space is still standing strong. That should tell you everything you need to know on regarding, could we possibly have that super cycle still? Well, the crypto space ain't budging. And if it ain't budging, then it's waiting for something major to happen, is possibly what I would say. Otherwise, it would have plummeted a long time ago, before that first missile landed. So if we're not budging, if the crypto space is standing its ground, for all of this, missiles are still flying and we're still holding the ground. The crypto space is still holding while missiles are, as we're talking, there's missiles flying in the Middle East right now. Yet the crypto space is holding its ground. If it's not budging from where it's standing, then that means it's waiting for something to happen on a major scale inside the market space. So, could we have a super cycle? I'll tell you what, the market is definitely waiting for something major to happen, possibly a super cycle. You did say a while ago the last phase will be the hardest. Yes, good point, Miles. Yeah. Regarding what I said, yeah. And I did say yes. I did say that 2 years ago. I said that the last stage of you making it across essentially the finishing line is going to be the most difficult part. I said you haven't seen essentially, if you thought what we went through inside the crypto space was difficult with the lawsuits of Gary Gensler and everything else that we had to go through inside the crypto space, if you thought that was long and frustrating, I said the last stage was going to be even more frustrating than you could possibly imagine. And what do you know? We're in a war. 20 countries are involved. Missiles are flying right now. 6 oil tankers are hit. Oil has reached per barrel prices we've never seen before. Everything is happening right now, and the crypto space is holding its ground. It's holding its ground, and it's not budging because something big is about to happen next. Now, on the topic of actually the Middle East, the Middle East crypto surge, essentially trading surges aimed regional financial shifts. The Middle East is experiencing a massive surge in the digital asset trading volumes, as both retail and institutional participants seek more efficient alternatives to traditional financial plumbing. This localized explosion essentially in activity suggests that the region is rapidly flipping the switches towards essentially a digital first economy, driven essentially by the desire to diversify away from legacy systems. And then essentially occasional essentially friction of the international banking blockades as regional hubs essentially compete to establish the most robust on-ramps for capital, the utility areas taking firm hold across these emerging markets. The growth is categorized by a strict push to integrate decentralized assets into the core of the regional economy. Institutional adoption. Large scale family offices or essentially and sovereign entities are increasingly viewing the ledger as a high utility settlement layer, moving beyond speculation to utilize the technology for real time cross border value transfer. Regulatory clarity. Several jurisdictions are moving towards unconditional surrender of outdated restrictive policies in favor of frameworks that essentially mirror transparency goals. Economic diversification. The surge aligns with the broader national essentially initiatives similar to the spirits of the regulations that are about to be passed inside the United States and modernize the financial sector. This trend indicates that the Middle East is also positioning itself as a central pillar in the 2026 global economy, challenging the dominance of the old traditional market space financial centers in the West by fostering a high utility ecosystem that rewards innovation and transparency. The region is attracting a new wave of developers and liquidity providers. As these markets continue to mature, the focus is expected to remain on how decentralized networks can challenge, essentially, can solve the unique, essentially, geographic and economic challenges of the region, ensuring long term stability and growth. Simplest way to put it, which is essentially what Coindesk is talking about right now, is that the crypto space is showing how, during times like this, it one reacts and how two it can solve what's happening right now. Not the war, but how money flows during massive crisis. And this is a massive crisis. About 20 countries involved in this war right now, including NATO. Pretty much, even though they're on defense mode, they're involved. But this is right now showing the world how crypto one reacts inside of a massive war, two, how money can flow in terms of liquidity during a war using cryptocurrencies, even during a network blackout. Now, putting that to one side, let's go to the comment section first before we go through the next news on tonight's live. Let's see where we're at. It's taking a lot longer than we originally thought because of all these outside factors, but it will happen. Just having our patience tested. Facts. I agree with that 100%. Also, XRP to the moon. Let's go. Also, just want to mention that 4 years ago, the World Economic Forum gave us a roadmap of what's going to happen 2030 onwards. You know, everybody remembers the 50-minute cities in their roadmap and essentially the social credit systems, the digital IDs, the CBDCs, which, you know, some have been played out and some are going to be played out, you know, by the end of this year or next year and so on. But 2030 is pretty much the cutoff line of everyone being in a digital world up to a certain extent. But if everybody remembers their blueprint, it was about a one world order. And we can't have a one world order in a digital sense if we have Iran's regime still in power and North Korea still in power in terms of Kim Jong un not job, and also China and Russia not playing ball. We can't be in a one world, you know, government, one world, this and that, if we have essentially central banks that are not involved inside essentially this plan, and that we have not jobs that can essentially, you know, strike the world whenever they want to. And a lot of people say essentially, why doesn't Iran have nuclear power? Why does, you know, Israel have nuclear power? Why does US have nuclear power? Why doesn't Iran have nuclear power? And I said the simplest way to put it for these idiots, or if you are genuinely, you know, thinking to yourself, well, why doesn't Iran have nuclear power? It's the simplest way to put it. It's like living on a street. It's like you living on a street and your next door neighbor for 4 hours a day says that they want to take you out and your family for 4 hours a day. And then everybody, and imagine this has been happening for 47 years. For 47 years, your next door neighbor has said for 4 hours a day, and he makes his kids say it too, that, and his wife, that they want to take your family out for 47 years. And then suddenly everybody on the road gets some sort of a, you know, a particular item. In this case, being a nuclear war, a nuclear essentially power plant or war or whatever, but a particular item, and your next door neighbor doesn't get one because for 47 years they said they will take you out, which is your next door neighbor. Are you going to go out of your way and give your not job neighbor what the neighborhood received, which is the nuclear power? Are you going to go and give your not job neighbor the nuclear power? No, because if you do, you're a moron. Because for 47 years, he has been telling you what he's going to be doing once he reaches that stage. So, for any idiot out there who's suggesting why doesn't Iran have a nuclear power? Why does Israel have nuclear power? Because Israel hasn't for 47 years been chanting death to America or death to Iran. But Iran has. And not Iran, essentially, the Iranian government has. And all of their moronic, cancerous, vicious supporters have. So that is why that country should never have any sort of, essentially, that is why, and I'm Iranian saying this, that is why the Iranian government should never have any of those capabilities. Because as I explained, it's like having a neighbor for 47 years saying, I want to take you out and your family. And then everyone on the road gets nuclear power except them. Are you going to go out of your way and say, no, we should give the not job nuclear power too? Even though for 47 years he's been chanting 4 hours a day, he's going to take me out if he has those capabilities. That is why one country has that capability, because it can be trusted with that capability, while as the other moron can't, which is the Iranian government. So just want to put that out there as well for people who might have been slightly confused on, why doesn't Iran have nuclear power? Iran has, no, it doesn't. It just doesn't. And it shouldn't have it in the first place. Now, just want to let everyone know that regarding the Iran situation. Good evening, Miles. And also, their central bank needs to come inside this whole digital world. The Iran central bank needs to be part of a digital world. There's many reasons why this war is happening, many. And one of them is that Iran's central bank needs to come towards the table for this one world digital order world to be happening. It needs to come towards the table. If you want Russia and China to join the digital world as well, you got to take Iran out, the Iranian government out. If you want North Korea to get off its high horse, you got to take care of the Iran. Essentially, you got to take out the Iranian government. Everything back essentially leads back to the Iranian government. If you want a digital world to happen, the Islamic Republic of Iran can't exist. If you want essentially North Korea and China on board, then you got to get rid of the Iranian government, because the Iranian government provides China and Russia with an immense amount of oil for $5 to $10 per barrel, which just blows everybody's mind, essentially. If you want North Korea essentially to, humble itself, you got to take out the Iranian government. There's so many reasons of why you got to take out the Iranian government, and none on the other side of the spectrum of why you shouldn't. There's so many reasons. I could list 99 reasons for you, but I'm not, because it'll be a very long live show. Now, good evening, Miles and CMF. Talk, good to see you. How you doing? Howdy, everyone. Great to be back with you all again. Let's go, Thompson. How you doing? What's your thoughts on using the new Tangent Pay card, Miles? I don't really want to connect a wallet, but would like your advice. Or would it be better to send you a message on Telegram? Regarding Tangent releasing a wallet, essentially, a bank card that can be attached to your wallet. If you have any questions on that, send me a message on Telegram. If you recently received a message from Tangent, or essentially something, an email or whatever regarding this Tangent bank card wallet, and you have questions about it, on what is it about, what could it be used for, how can I use it, so on. If you have any questions about it, definitely send me a message on Telegram. I'll be more than happy to help you out. Your latest substance explains this very well. The blockchain will be very transparent. Facts. Yes, if you aren't reading my Substacks, please read my Substacks. It is extremely beneficial for you to read the Substacks I release. I release only one article a day, one Substack a day, and I simplify so much on everything that's happening around you. So you or anyone around you can also have a better idea of how, one, the world operates, and two, about everything else. So definitely go and check it out if you haven't already. And thank you so much, Ray, for pointing the Substacks out. I love the Tangent Wallet card. So dope. Let's go, Ray. And Shelly, good question, because a lot of people might be confused on that. Thank you so much for that as well. Now, Crypto Lobby sends $271 to sway the 2026 elections. So the crypto essentially lobby, who has been paying not politicians directly, but paying towards their campaigns so they become pro crypto, has so far essentially invested $271 million. It could be towards Republicans or Democrats. Any politician that wants to become pro crypto is getting money from this. And this fund is essentially funded by, Coinbase, Ripple, Kraken, and a few other big players. This massive capital deployment is designed to overhaul the legislative financial plumbing in Washington, ensuring that the utility era of 2026 digital economy is essentially protected by favorable policies. By targeting key battleground races, the lobby seeks to flip the switch on congressional sentiments, moving away from the skepticism of the traditional market space and towards a regulatory environment that supports the expansion of decentralized settlement layers. The lobbying effort is strictly focused on securing a permanent place for digital assets within the national financial infrastructure. A primary goal that the spend is essentially to ensure the continued momentum of the acts, the Genius Act and essentially the Clarity Act, to be able to move forward. The funds are being essentially distributed across the political spectrum to prevent the unconditional essentially surrender to the baptism essentially gridlock, aiming instead essentially for a unified national strategy that recognizes blockchain as a high utility player, essentially pillar of American competitiveness. A significant portion of the $271 million is dedicated to grassroots campaigns and explaining how modernized financial ledgers can provide more transparent and accessible services for average citizens compared to traditional legacy systems. It's nice to see, the Trump administration from one side pushing for, crypto to happen inside the United States, and from the other side, the crypto companies are essentially funding politicians for their campaigns that essentially to become pro crypto, they can get access to some sort of funding and become, their mayor of the town or so on and so on. So it's nice to see one side, Trump's administration is helping the crypto space, the other side, the crypto companies are funding essentially politicians' campaigns. Now, putting that to one side, this is also one of the reasons why crypto is unstoppable. Putting that to one side, court closes essentially custodian's fight with Federal Reserve just as the Fed opens a master account door. So, custodial bank is one of those banks that tried to apply, one of the first blockchain banks, also digital blockchain banks, that applied for a Fed account and they were rejected. So they decided to sue the Fed. At the same time, that was during Biden's era. At the same time, during Trump's era, the Fed gave access to Kraken Exchange, which is the first ever exchange to have some sort of access to the Fed. The long-standing legal battle between Custodial Bank and Federal Reserve has reached a definitive conclusion. Just as the central bank signals a potential shift in its stance towards digital asset institutions, after years of litigation regarding the denial of a master account, the court has formally closed the case, marking the end of a high profile attempt to force the traditional markets of financial plumbing to accommodate crypto native banks through the judicial system. This closure arrives at a pivotal moment as the Federal Reserve appears to be flipping the switches by introducing new guidelines that could provide a more structured on ramp for specialized institutions to access the national financial infrastructure. The resolution of this conflict essentially and the Fed's policy adjustments reflects a significant evolution in 2026 digital economy. The master account evolution, the Fed's new open door policy suggests an end to the unofficial banking blockade, establishing a tiered framework that allows high utility digital banks to apply for accounts under rigorous oversights and aligns with the US Clarity Act. Judicial precedents versus administrative policies. The court's decision to close the flight essentially underscores the path to integration for digital assets will likely be paved by legislative and regulatory frameworks like the Genius Act rather than through unconditional surrender forced by individual lawsuits. What the Fed is suggesting here is that if you want to sue the Fed to get a bank charter license, it's not going to work. And that the only way to get a Fed access account in some sort of a way, a master or a skinny account, it's by applying for it. And if we see that you are credible, you would receive a license. But if you want to sue us, you won't receive a license. It's exactly what happened to Custodial Bank. Kraken applied, Custodial Bank applied, rejected, sued. Now the case is closed. So they lost millions of dollars in court fees. On the other hand, Kraken applied, accepted. They saw one as credible, the other not so much. And the Fed has just explained to everyone that if you sue us, it's going to lead to nowhere. And that also they're creating rules and regulations so that neo and blockchain banks or blockchain essentially foundations or companies can get essentially access to the Fed, but it wouldn't be by through suing them. Instead, it's going to be some sets of essentially guidelines they're going to put down for people to follow. Now, putting the Fed scenario to one side, former JP Morgan executives former JP Morgan executives have come together and launched a Hong Kong crypto prop firm. A group of high profile former executives from JP Morgan, including veterans from JP Morgan as Distra and essentially Klein, have officially launched a cryptocurrency prop trading firm based in Hong Kong. This move signals a significant migration of talent from the legacy banking blockade into the specialized financial plumbing of the 2026 essentially digital economy. By leveraging their deep experience in traditional market making and risk management, the founders aim to flip the switch on institutional grade liquidity provisions within the digital asset space, offering sophisticated on-ramp for professional capital. The launch reflects the ongoing institutionalization of global settlement layers and essentially in the professionalism of trading. Legacy expert essentially integration. The firm intends to apply for the rigorous standards of Tier 1 banking to the high utility world of digital assets, ensuring that their trading operations meet the transparency and stability requirements increasingly demanding by the US Clarity Act. Hong Kong is essentially what they've chosen as their headquarters. By establishing their headquarters in Hong Kong, the founders are capitalizing on the region's clear regulatory framework, which seeks to avoid unconditional surrender of innovation to overregulation, positioning the city as a center, essentially as a central pillar of the 2026 global economy, modernizing essentially the national infrastructure. The firm's entry into the market essentially is seen as a validation of the Genius Act's vision, as it brings the sophisticated strategies of traditional prop essentially to the trading of decentralized ledgers, enhancing price discovery and market efficiency. This transition of elite human capital into the crypto sector underscores the belief that the future of capital markets lies in on-chain infrastructure. Analysts suggest that the arrival of such seasoned professionals from JP Morgan will help the bridge between traditional volatility and structured environments required for mass institutional adoption. As the firm begins its operations and essentially serves as a prominent example of how the utility area is attracting the brightest minds from the traditional world to build the next generation of global financial infrastructure. It could be a big news scenario. I'll explain why. We have to see what these essentially JP Morgan executives, former executives, are going to be building. And we know that they're going to be building some sort of trading essentially platform in Hong Kong. Interesting they chose Hong Kong. Couple of questions remain. One, are they still in contact essentially with JP Morgan? And is this essentially a way for JP Morgan to have some sort of a third party company based out of Hong Kong? Are they going to be introducing their own token? Which blockchain are they going to be choosing essentially if they decide to do that? Is this just going to be a trading company? I'll probably keep everyone, essentially updated if I do get any news from these executives. But it also shows that, the brightest minds inside the financial sector, essentially, from the banking side, even though they're slightly closed-minded sometimes, but the brightest minds from essentially the banking sector of JP Morgan executives deciding to leave their, cushy, essentially very comfortable jobs to go across the border into Hong Kong and create a blockchain company. Honestly, we really did go from a space inside the crypto sector from speculation and thieves and criminals only use crypto to now JP Morgan executives leaving their comfortable jobs, going to Hong Kong to create a crypto company. It really does show how far we've come. Now, the next news on tonight's live is regarding Ripple. But before we talk about Ripple, let's go to the comment section first. So what's happening there, and then go straight into the next news. Yes, I agree. I have one too. Miles, have you talked about the Ripple buyback program? I have, yes. Yesterday, I think I talked about Ripple buyback program, if I'm not mistaken. I think the big thing will be crypto going to take its role in alternative cross-border movements. Yeah, I agree. Also, during the war and other things going essentially around the globe, being able to transfer money legally is a plus. Facts. But yeah, I did talk about essentially the Ripple buyback program, and if I'm not mistaken, was that yesterday's live or the day before. Go and check it out, definitely. Um, yeah. Now, or Scott, if you want, just direct message me, and I'll just send the live that I talked about it, and I'll tell you what time frame I talked about it and live, so you don't have to watch the whole thing if you don't want to. Now, Ripple is what we're going to talk about next on tonight's live. Ripple says RLUSD could overtake USDC in the stablecoin race. Let us not forget, essentially, USDC, in other words, Circle, has just overtaken BlackRock. And Ripple is suggesting that essentially RLUSD could overtake Circle's USDC, essentially, coin. Ripple has expressed a significant confidence in its upcoming stablecoin, or USD, suggesting essentially it has the potential to challenge and eventually overtake USDC in the competitive stablecoin market space. The company aims to leverage its existing financial plumbing and essentially extensive networks of institutional partnerships to position RRUSD essentially as a primary liquidity tool for the 2026 digital economy. So far, RRUSD has achieved incredible things. It's climbing the ranks like there's no tomorrow when it comes to RRUSD. A lot of people probably be doubting Ripple. Ripple even suggesting that essentially RLUSD could overtake USDC in any sort of shape or form. People would probably laugh at the idea of even essentially, RLUSD overtaking USDT, for example. I'll be very frank and very honest. Tether doesn't have essentially the licensings that Ripple has. Circle has those licensings, no doubt about it. But Circle also went through a decoupling stage with Silicon Valley Bank. Tether has issues with transparency. Ripple's the only one that actually have licensing everywhere they go. So if it comes down to transparency, if it comes down to licensing, if it comes down to compliance, on any of those bases or any of those factors, Ripple takes the rankings. RLUSD will obviously take the rankings, and so will essentially XRP and the XRP ledger. That's why, as I've said multiple times, when it comes to finance, there's just no comparison. When it comes to safety, when it comes to speed, when it comes to reassurance, when it comes to transparency, when it comes to compliance, when it comes to licensing, there's just no comparison. It's Ripple, RLUSD, XRP Ledger, and so on, and everybody else who wants to compete inside the financial sector, any other project out there that wants to do that. Yes, obviously USDC essentially has a bigger market cap. Yes, USDT has a bigger market cap, but you got to essentially, picture when RLUSD started compared to when USDC started and when USDT started. That's the reason they're ahead. They're not ahead because they're better. They're ahead because they started at an earlier date. Now, the strict push for RLUSD dominance centers at the few critical competitive advantages: institutional trust and auditing. Ripple plans to maintain that rigorous monthly auditing schedule, aligning with the transparency standards of the US Clarity, essentially. The XRP Ledger's integration, RIUSD, is designed to work in tandem with XRP, as essentially Ripple has mentioned multiple times, even though people would say, no, it isn't. XRP is at the heart of Ripple, even though RLUSD plays a role when it comes to stablecoins. XRP still is the heartbeat of Ripple, it's the North Star of Ripple, essentially being mentioned by Ripple multiple times. By securing various state and international licensings, Ripple is positioning RLUSD to be a cornerstone of the national financial infrastructure, fulfilling the efficiency goals outlined by essentially in the Genius Act. While USDC currently dominates and holds essentially a position among institutional users, Ripple believes that its deep-rooted history in solving real-world problems and all the companies they've acquired essentially inside the financial sector, the licenses they've acquired, is actually going to be pushing essentially RLUSD way past USDC, and they don't even see USDT as a competition at all. On that note, that's essentially Ripple sees RLUSD taking the ranks away from USDC and going to number one. We have also reached the endings of tonight's live. This was the CMF live show, stands for Crypto Mars Family. My name is Miles. You can tune to this live Monday, Friday, 10 p.m. long time onwards for the essentially most recent news regarding cryptocurrency, CBDCs, AI, politics, and regulations. Pretty much all the information you should know about regarding the world completely transforming into a digital space. On tonight's live, we discussed essentially news on Ripple suggesting that essentially RIUSD will take the ranks. We talked about essentially former JP Morgan members, executives going to Hong Kong to start a crypto company. We talked about essentially the Fed in terms of master accounts and the guidelines. We talked about the crypto lobbying spending also. We went through news regarding the Middle East in terms of crypto surges that are happening. We talked about MoonPay's new integration of AI agents. We also went through news regarding stablecoins, Bitcoin, and a perspective from one of the legendary macro investors. We talked about Circle overtaking essentially BlackRock in terms of essentially the US treasuries or tokenization. We went through news regarding Iran moving hundreds of millions of dollars, data reveals now, through cryptocurrencies during internet blackouts. We also talked about essentially the war that's still happening in the Middle East. So, just want to also say the disclaimer of this live show, as always, is not financial advice, not political advice, and whatever I say is only for entertainment purposes. This was episode 457 of the CMF live show. If you're watching this for the first time ever, tune into this live show essentially on Monday because we have reached the weekend, essentially the weekend. So I just want to say, everybody have a great weekend. Obviously, before we do go, let's go start the comment section first. Let's see what's happening there. I agree also during the war. I agree also during the war and other things going around the globe, but being able to transfer money legally is plus. Yep. Good night, Miles, and all the CMF. Thank you for great news and have a great weekend. Let's go, JP. See you on Monday, same time as usual, brother. And have a great weekend. Thanks, Miles. Have a great weekend and see you on Monday. T, have a great weekend. See you on Monday as well. Currently sitting at number 45, only a couple of months ago. It was 100. It's moving up the ranks fast. Facts. Let's go, Shelly, for putting up the stats. See you on Monday, same time as usual as well. Have a great weekend, Shelly. Great info as always, brother. Have a great weekend. Let's go, Paul. See you on Monday, same time as usual as well. Outstanding Friday live. Like, share, and leave a comment for support. Take care, Miles of CMF. Let's go, Ray. See you on Monday, same time as usual as well, brother. Have a great weekend. Love you, Miles, and have a lovely weekend all. Let's go, Lena. See you on Monday, same time as usual as well. Have a great weekend as well. Good night, Miles and CMF. Great live. Have a great weekend. Let's go, Free and Fabulous. Have a great weekend as well. Okay, we have reached the endings of tonight's live. Love you all. Have a great weekend, everyone. Good night, Miles, and God bless. Let's go, Cali. See you on Monday, same time as usual as well. Have a great weekend. Like, share, comment, follow, subscribe if you already haven't. If you have, thank you so much. Love you all. Have a great weekend, and see you on Monday, same time as usual, 10 p.m. long time onwards. Thanks, Miles, for another fantastic evening as normal. Let's go, Addy. And thanks, Miles. Have a great weekend. Let's go, Comatose. Have a great weekend as well. Have a great weekend, Addy, as well. And Cali to you too. See you on Monday, everyone. Same